All right, so we'll call to order at 4:02 p.m. Jason Tadlock.
Here.
Jessica Conley.
Here.
Sharon Johnson.
Here.
Corey Daly.
Here.
Appointments as needed, electing a public member, which is Guy.
I would nominate Guy Finley.
I'll second.
Shoot, this is my chance.
And a chairperson.
I'll nominate Jason again.
I'll second.
I would like to nominate Guy Finley. Or anyone else that would like to be chairperson. Is that all right?
Okay with it?
Yeah, I was concerned that I might have to leave early today.
Do I take over? Do you take over or do I?
I mean, I know there's been a vote, there's been a nomination. I don't know if there's been a formal vote yet on the chair. Roll call?
I guess I asked to turn down my nomination, so then I nominate Guy. Did someone second Guy? Sharon?
Roll call.
Jason Tadlock.
Yes.
Jessica Conley.
Yes.
Sharon Johnson.
Yes.
Corey Daly.
Yes.
We do have Elaine and Joe both on the call as well.
Well, I guess then I get to take over then. The next item we have is to review responsibilities of the JRB.
Joe, can you hear us?
I can. I didn't know if you were turning it over to me or not. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Joe Murray from Ellers. Proud to be the city's financial advisor. This afternoon, you're going to be walking through the proposed tax incremental district project plan for district number 5. Your role as the joint review board is to help review the project plan and make sure it makes sense to you and that you represent the overlying taxing jurisdictions. If approved, the incremental tax revenue that'll be created or collected moving forward, it's also your share of the taxes. So you are helping contribute to this project. The ultimate decision that you have to make as the joint review board is whether or not the project plan meets the but-for test. But for the creation of a TID district, would this development happen, or would it happen within the time frame and in the manner and in values that the city is desiring to accomplish? That's the ultimate decision you are trying to make. Today is just a walkthrough to go through the project plan so you're familiar with it. And at the end of the meeting will be to schedule your next or the final joint review board, which will be after the city council hopefully reviews and approves it, and then you would be the final action before it can be completely done. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about that.
Anyone have any questions? Great, then we'll move on to reviewing and discussing the draft project.
Let me go back. I want to make sure I understand the if, but, or, so that I can explain that to my school board members if needed. My understanding is that in order to establish that test basically means that if not within the TID district, it's not likely that this development would take place within the proposed timeframe of the TID district, correct?
That's part of it. It's within the time frame. It's within the manner in which it's being developed, in terms of values that it's generating, the type of materials, et cetera, the type of project that the city and the community is trying to attract in general. It's not just the time frame, it's broader than that. If you go to page 4 of the project plan, there's the but-for test is described in more detail there. right there, number one. But for the creation of the district, the development as projected would not occur, or that it would not occur in the manner, at the values, or within the time frame considered and desired by the city. That's your but-for test.
So in a scenario like ours, if I'm explaining it to my school board, in like the city of Elkhorn in this area where obviously if we had other similar type developments taking place, and that would be pretty difficult to justify or say, well, yes, this TID's needed because there's already other developments going on. But in the instance where we don't have similar type projects or developments, and having received feedback that other developers haven't been able to go into, that makes it a little bit, I guess, stronger case for that if, but, or.
That's a fair statement. I'll talk about it a little bit further. If you look a little bit down on the screen, you see a red number that says negative 0.29%. That is the rate of return that we are projecting that this developer is going to make, even after receiving the development incentives. Now, obviously the developer is going to make money as part of the deal. But the way that they're going to be looking to make money will be when they sell the lots and they're further developed. This review is based on just getting the utilities, the street, getting it ready, and then the developer selling the lots to other builders and developers to actually build vertically on top of it.
Okay.
I add that I really appreciate that the city took the extra time to have this review done, to be able to say this actual but-for test gets met. It's always been one of my biggest, most difficult pieces of saying yes to any TID is, well, how can you really prove that someone did a financial review and it makes sense that this developer couldn't come in without the assistance of this TID? It's always been pointed to, well, the joint review board has to decide that, but we know 100% less than what the city knows about bringing in a developer. And so by them doing this extra new step, East Troy just did this, and now you doing it, I think it is hands down the best way that you can really be able to say, someone went and dived into the financials and looked to see whether it makes sense and how much makes sense for us to be providing to the developer. So I really appreciate that that gets done.
Well, Ellers deserves a credit for suggesting it as an option. I don't know if we even knew it was an option before. And two, we knew that if anybody would hold our feet to the fire, it'd be Jessica at the county. So we wanted to be able to be ready. So.
Were there any other questions or discussion for review of the responsibilities of the JRB? Okay, great. Then we'll move on to review and discuss the draft project plan.
Adam, do you want to kick off or do you want me to go straight into it?
I mean, I can kick it off, I guess, if you want. Depends on, I don't know whose voice they're or at least wanting to hear right now. I don't know, but
Go ahead, Adam.
so we're excited about this project in terms of, or I should say, the project plan that's before you. It would encompass about 300 acres. You see that in the project plan. Part of the reason the project boundaries would have to be so large is because we have to meet that 35% threshold, which says you can't have more than 35% newly platted residential in development. And so in order to meet that threshold, the proposed project that's in this project plan would be for new and development to do approximately 150 new homes up to 163, depending on what happens with the school district. But in order to do that on the 60 acres, obviously, you gotta, because it's 60 acres, therefore already you're having to have a pretty big area in order to meet that 35% test. But then what makes it even tougher is that there's some other considerations, like you have to deduct any wetlands from the area, don't count towards that boundary. So you then have to find if there's any wetlands, which there are. There's approximately 14 acres of wetlands in the boundary. you then have to then find additional acreage to offset that because they pretend like that doesn't exist in terms of when you're trying to then do that 35% threshold test. So that was just something that we had to consider when putting together the boundaries. Yeah.
You made a statement that 150 or up to 163 homes, depending on what the district does. Can you explain to me what that?
And I appreciate you asking that question so I could put Jason on the spot. So thank you. I did not ask her to ask this question, but I'm glad you did.
No,
So
the developer has requested for the district to sell a portion of our property that has the Options Virtual Charter School located on. It would be a strip of land that would allow them to put in 2 more lots. Is that correct, the number?
13.
13.
Actually
The
got it up here too.
school board reviewed their initial proposal and what they shared. Yeah, those lots on to the north of that, what would be Second Street, and the school board. Initially, there was an interest, but then after discussion, they did not want to sell that portion. At least as, currently, they felt like the acreage on that lot, when it was originally purchased, they wanted to have it space in case they needed an additional building or location there. They felt and tight, and that God is not creating more land out there.
Hey, Matt, can you pull up the map on page 7, project plan?
When we originally bought the property, we did sell a portion of that property line to provide the owner at that time the space needed to put that road through. But there was never the proposal to have the houses on both sides.
So just as a preliminary matter before getting into the specifics of Newman's project, these are the boundaries of the proposed district. And the reason it's so large, the reason the area is so large is because of trying to meet that 35% test we just talked about, and dealing with the wetlands. There's another factor in there too, where we have there's a 12% limit that says you can't have your TID districts can't exceed 12% of the total equalized value of the city. And so, but what makes that more complicated is that when you're creating a new district like we are now, they don't look at the increment that's created by, obviously, the district you're trying to create. They look at the base value of all the current property values in that area and then add that with your existing increment that's been created in the other TID district. So short answer is we have about $12 million worth of TID that's been created through TID 4, which you guys are obviously well familiar with. And then you had to add the equalized property value of all the properties in this proposed district on top of that number. And together that couldn't exceed $150 million. And the calculations are further on in this project plan. But so as a result too, when we were drawing the boundaries, not only did we have to meet the acreage test, but you also had to figure out how you're going to draw boundaries such that you didn't incorporate really high value properties like apartment complexes that, could be $4 or $5 million. And it's obviously a very small parcel relative to some of these others. So that was just another factor in terms of drawing the boundaries that limited what we could do. And unfortunately, there are, quite a few, there is wetlands acreage, not only in the parcel that Newman's interested in, but some of the vacant property that would be south of the city that we would have tried to incorporate is almost entirely all wetlands that the city owns, so we couldn't incorporate that. And so this was the best of what we could do under the circumstances. And then on top of that, what we were trying to do.
And does the TID have to be contiguous?
Yes, yep.
So you can like jump over and grab the graveyard.
Right.
I'm just gonna look for the map that gives you a good idea. If you look at page 32, Matt, can you pull that one up? Perfect. Well, nice. So in terms of determining the boundaries of the district, the other consideration we had was you got the 60 acres, which is, obviously the biggest parcel in there. there's two parcels adjacent to that. One's the kind of vertical parcel just west of it, and then there's I don't know, it's a rectangle that's just south of it. That the developer said that they might in the future want to expand and add another street of homes in those areas, particularly the one on the west side. They actually had already sketched out potentially another street of homes there. So if we were going to potentially allow, an expansion of that project in the future, we needed to at least account for it. Whether or not they get TID funding for that is a different story, but because of that 35% threshold test I told you about, we couldn't have, in the future, they couldn't turn around and want to add more new residential, newly platted residential in the boundaries of this district if we didn't take it into account as a possibility. So hence, that's why we had to factor in trying to include those properties. And then there's that far property in the north on West Market Street, which this is one we've had quite a bit of interest in over the years, but
That's the 12 acres for the apartments?
yeah, it's
Or
technically,
21 acres, right?
it's technically 14 acres.
Oh,
And that one, we've had interest in, there's been a variety of different proposals coming through, some for apartment complexes. Some want to do apartment complexes there in the past. There was a lot of opposition from the community because there were already a lot of apartments in that area. We've had some other people come with for other variations, duplexes, et cetera, but they just can't seem to make it happen. And so because we know this is an ideal location for another development, furthermore, in understanding that in terms of the city's needs and obviously the community's needs for housing, there's a lot of different segments. So you've got the need for new apartments, which with Creekside is checking the box on that. There's a desire for single family housing, which is what the Newman project would help with. And then there was a desire for, maybe more of a high cluster, more of a cluster housing development slash, even higher density project that wouldn't technically be apartments, but that might be something would be owner occupied to try and truly achieve what people are perceiving as more of a quote unquote attainable housing option. So the idea was by including this parcel in the TID district, we could potentially provide funding for somebody who wanted to do something like a cluster development or duplexes, et cetera, that might be catering to more of a, lower price point. So, and coincidentally enough, Matt, if you want to bring up the other map. We just got this on Monday. So, but Belinsky actually came to us with this on Monday. This is kind of what we had in mind in terms of a project where they would try to build, houses that are cheaper. There'd be some duplexes in there. I don't want to artificially get hopes up and say that this is definitely, going to happen as part of this TID, but this is kind of something what we had in mind in terms of putting this together and what we've tried to encourage developers who are coming to us saying, hey, this is kind of the missing, I don't say missing middle, but this is kind of that additional segment of housing we're trying to find, something like this that might be a little bit cheaper and might be a little bit higher density option. So this is just what could go there. Again, they submitted a proposal. They're doing something similar to this apparently in Whitewater. So anyway, just as something to give you an idea. So in terms of how we drew the district boundaries the way we did, we had all these factors of trying to get this property in there, wetlands, TID value, or, base values, equalized values, and potential future expansion of the Newman development. So a lot of different factors going into the boundaries. So if you hear gripes about, why is it so big? Well, those are the reasons why.
We have multiple development proposals for these parcels already.
Well, when we put this project plan together and we've been working on it, our main focus was the 60 acres. But then again, Newman has identified interest in potentially the two that are adjacent to it. The one that's on the north, that one we knew that there was some interest in that, but we had not seen a real concrete proposal that we had a lot of confidence in until obviously seeing what Belinsky just submitted. So if this were to get wrapped into the TID district and would be, if we were to receive TID funding, well, we're going to have to amend the project plan to include it as another project. Whether we do that now or whether we do that in the future, I know Joe was in the, we should do it now, but the problem is it's because it is speculative and I just don't know how much confidence at this point. And I know that because too, right now, Belinsky is also wanting to move forward on another housing development next to, or another duplex development just next to Walgreens. And that's something that's been in the work for years. And that they want to get kicked off April, May of this year. So realistically, I don't know how quickly this other one would really happen. We don't have any numbers about the financials. We haven't done the pro forma that obviously the county's going to want to see.
But we don't need the details on that to have it included. Correct.
We would need to have at least a rough idea because we need to know, what is the projected increment that's going to be generated? How much financing do they need? The pro forma of whether or not do they actually need it, the financing for the but-for test. We would need some concrete data, which we just don't have right now.
But it can be amended when we're ready.
Yeah. So by including it, at least in the district boundaries now, if
Right.
we were to amend it in the future, it would be to amend
Just the cost.
just the cost of that project in there, which is, I know something county has wanted. They don't want just sort of an open-ended, we can just add anything we want to in the future.
So probably for efficiency, it would make sense if they could get it in now and we can do it all at once, but there's nothing prohibiting it to come back later on.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So unfortunately, this may be a situation of we go through this the next month or two, you guys approve the project plan, and then 3 or 4 months from now, the JRB for TID 5 gang gets back together and we get to do this again, but it won't be as extensive of a process.
Oh, no, we might have to have 3 meetings in a year.
Yeah, no, that's possible. That's true. Well, I
Just remember in my school board days when it was like 3 a week.
don't jinx it. And just one other thing too about the TID boundaries that, this is more of a speculative thing, but the TID boundaries right now as drawn do include the Holton factory property, which is, an area of concern. So if somebody were to come to the city in the future, or JB or JRB with a proposal to rehab that boundary or rehab that parcel, it is in the TID district. So it's just another benefit of the way the boundary's drawn right now. So
that is an excellent segue to my next question, so that we can understand how developed property within the TID is treated. 'Cause quite a lot of it here, and I know the Holton factory is one of them. I also know that looks like the Sparinos property that they've been trying to sell is one of them. I don't know if that would impact it or not for doing improvements there, but basically what impact does this have on already developed property?
yeah, I mean, it's going to impact the city in the sense that so whatever base values currently exist in the TID, that property value, that tax value, we all continue to collect. We don't lose access to that. But if there was to be additional development in the TID district that generates increment, that increment, yes, is going to go into the revenue. So yes, county, the school, the tech college, we're going to not have access to that additional increment that's generated in the TID district on some of these other developed parcels. But how likely is it that there's going to be a substantial increase in value in those other already developed parcels is hard to say.
Right, so if the parcel's already developed and it has just typical appreciation, that new appreciation would be part of the TID increment, whether or not there was improvements made on it or changes, correct?
Correct.
So, it's I don't know, 6% depreciation. I know it's not going to average that. I think recently we've been averaging around that, but if it's a 3% appreciation each year for how many years was the TID for?
Well, it says 2034 is when it's projected.
So whatever, yeah, but all that appreciation would go into the TID and then the other would stay with the other tax levy, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So that's, I guess, any questions, just generally speaking, I guess, about the boundaries themselves, why we drew them, why we're proposing to draw them the way they are.
No, when I saw them, that was my first guess, is that it was to make them right mix and stuff. And
Yeah.
of course, I looked to see if my house was, I'm like, no, it's north of mine, so, yeah. We had big, huge redevelopment plans for my house now.
And just for clarification, when you said when does it close, I think I said 2034, it's actually 2043. I think I'm thinking 2034 seems really far away, but it's not that far away, so. Joe, did I, anything you want to add to the conversation about boundaries or
No,
considerations?
no, thank you, Adam. I think that was outstanding, just to give an idea. I appreciate you highlighting to the JRB members that this is a very large district. It's focused primarily, the numbers are based on the Newman development that you see here on this map. But as Adam mentioned, there are 3 other potential development sites that could be developed. And as he said, there's somebody walked in even on Monday to say, here's something. If there are additional project costs, the county has asked, and the project plan does include language that says, if the project costs exceed 120% of what was projected, the city will come back to the JRB to get approval, such that if there are more incentives for development of lots A, B, or C, the expectation is that the JRB will be convened again to talk those through. I wanted to add one point on I think the second part of your question is what happens to the property that's in the boundary that's already developed. It really has no impact on those properties whatsoever. As you see, it's a huge district. All those property owners are not going to see further development. And it's not required by any of the numbers. Being located in a TIF district does not prohibit them or create any sort of a negative situation towards their ability to develop or to sell their property in any way, shape, or form. Most people, I highly doubt, will even know that they're in a TIF district within that boundary. The only ones that'll probably really know it will be the ones in the development areas, which will be coming forward. So I think that might have been the second part of your question, but your first part of it, Adam answered correctly. Yes, any appreciation for inflation will be going into the TID. The base value is capped as to what it is as a 1/125.
So will that portion of their taxes be reported on their tax bill? Like with our current tax bills, it breaks it out by here's your school portion taxes, your technical college and so forth. I'm just more curious from is it something that we'll need to be prepared to explain to people?
That's a good question. I don't know, Corey.
I think it,
Or do they not
I
even
think
know?
it treats like the city's, our portion of the TID, it looks like it's ours.
So it'll look like their city taxes are going up and up and up disproportionately?
No, I think it stays, the tax rate is still gonna be the same as everybody else. It's just that extra value doesn't come to the city, it goes into the TID. So it looks like it's all part of the city. It doesn't separate a TID where the money goes. It doesn't say that the TID goes to the TID. So each portion is still.
Right, I understand the tax rate's the same, but I mean, their dollar amounts, if it's like being reported as part of the city portion as, 10 years down the road, it'll look like my city portion is high.
I don't think it will look different.
It shouldn't make a difference. The tax bill should come back and the property owner is going to pay a tax bill that looks the same as they do now. Whatever happens in it.
I know
tax
the
bill's
tax
gonna be
bill
paid.
won't be different, but the way it's reported will look just like
It'll
someone
look
outside of the
exactly the
TID.
same. They will
but
not
it
look
won't
any
be
different.
Okay.
It's a good question.
Unless the county has something that I'm not aware of with tax bills, or if the city does anything differently, but no, it's traditionally not identified and broken out any further on a tax bill than anybody who lives outside of the TID district.
In terms of that, can you pull up can you go back to the map of the plan, the site plan, concept plan for the development itself?
For a market?
No, for the.
Okay.
The
Do you know
next
what page
page.
it is on by chance?
35. This one?
Yeah.
35.
You have the breakdown of the base increment by taxing district. It's usually, I sometimes see it in these packets.
Yeah, the last
I thought that
page.
was a projected.
That's the projected, yeah.
Okay. I mean, the base, what is excluded from this. So at before January 1, 25, what are the frozen values, so to speak?
Okay, yeah,
Is that-
I think that actually is in the, if you look at pages,
We will not know what those base values are until August. To know
Okay.
what the base, that's when the Department of Revenue will finalize and certify what the values are. And that'll set the base, and we won't know those numbers until August 15th.
Okay.
pages 12 through 22 have the values of all the individual parcels, but in terms of the value of the district as a whole, to Joe's point, those aren't going to be finalized until the summer, although I was gonna, once I brought this up, I was just gonna say, in terms of the project itself, if you're looking at, on page 23, they've got the equalized value test. And that's where as I mentioned earlier, okay, I said 14 million, but right now, our current TID 4 has value of 16.3 million, and this is the amount of increment that's been generated. The base value of the proposed district is $127 million. So that's the current value of all the properties in the TID as of now. So I don't know if that's what you're asking for, or.
I'll wait till the next meeting, maybe you'll have a better idea.
So it's
Yeah, I get it.
127 million
Mhm.
right now.
Is the base, yeah, it's the base value of all the properties in the district. Then you can see the capacity right now is 151. So, there's not a huge gap between the base value in the TID district, the increment that's been generated TID 4, and the total, our 12% limit. There's not a huge gap. So you can see in here, there's capacity of about $8 million left. But just in terms of the proposed development itself, Matt, can you go back to that map?
Yeah. Oh, what page was that again? Sorry. Thank you.
As we talked about before, this is the project that we currently know about and we currently have information about. As we said, it would include 150 homes if they were to build the road on the south side, which is, I think it's that 3rd Avenue or 1st.
Second Avenue right here?
So if they were to extend Second Avenue and build houses on the south side, they could do 150 houses in the development. If they were to add additional 13 on the north side, it would be 163. So the challenge is going to be, how do we figure out financially how to make that road happen? One option is you increase the increment in the district. Let's say you give the developer 75%. Right now, the proposal is that they would get 70% based upon the pro forma. You could increase that to 75 to help cover the cost of the road and to get the houses on the south side. That obviously has its pros and its cons. From the city's perspective, just from an access point and public safety perspective, I know the fire department, police, et cetera, that road extension go all the way through, so that there's a, access point on the south side of the development. We would certainly appreciate having more homes rather than fewer homes as well as part of this development. So not having that road at all and just having a dead end at the end of Second Avenue is not a great option. You get fewer homes and the access is worse, but from the developer's perspective, they can't financially make that road extension happen unless they have houses on both sides of the street. So that's going to be the challenge for them if the school district won't sell them the acreage. So as part of the development, that they would start, the phasing would be on the north side first, and then, phase 1 on top, and they would do about 20 to 30 homes a year, or per phase. And so,
And I'm kind of, to help clarify for me a little bit, because my understanding is part of the whole point of putting the TID in place is that the infrastructure gets covered by the TID district or the incentives there. So the fact that if the district doesn't sell, which that's where they're pretty solid on not wanting to sell those 13 lots, if the road is covered through an incentive or, the TID piece anyway, how is that negatively impacting the likelihood of, wouldn't it just extend the length of time potentially to generate the revenue from the property taxes within the TID to cover the cost of the road because you're less 13 lots.
That would be true if our incentive was tied to paying for infrastructure, but because the TID is structured simply as a financial incentive based upon the amount of increment they generate, this is just a pure financial incentive as opposed to, hey, we're paying for even though,
So could the financial incentive be increased to make up the difference for the lots?
and that's what I'm saying. So if you did it, you'd have to, let's say, increase it to about 75% according to what I got back from the developer yesterday.
Because I don't think it's likely that the school board's going to move off of that, but I completely agree, it's important to have that road there. I don't know how the other JRB members would feel, but if it's doable, I wouldn't be opposed to increasing the incentive to make up the difference. It's hard to force any entity, if it wasn't the school district, if it was Gateway or the county or something, to say, hey, sell that land for the project. As much as I want the housing development stuff, it's pretty hard to convince a different organization that, yeah, you should give up that land.
Well, like I said, the developer said that they could do a one-sided road, or they could extend the road, house on one side if we increase the increment to 75%. So,
And we're able to do that if
well,
desired.
that's the question for your fellow JRB members.
Actually, it's not. That's actually a city decision. As far
Well-
as if they want to increase the incentive, that's not a JRB decision to make.
So the city would have to approve increasing the incentive, and then the JRB would still have that
Review it
decision on
anyway.
approving the plan.
And that's what I mean, is that you guys are gonna have to vote to approve the plan.
I guess, from my own perspective, I would not be opposed to, because I know, advocate from the district's perspective. They would like the project to go in, but the board did not want to give up the land, so. I can maybe support increasing it or approving the increase from our JRB role perspective.
Well, it sounds like Newman and/or the city needs to polish up their presentation skills for the board and see if they want to sell that or not, and change their mind.
We tried.
They did a nice job. Adam came and supported it, and I thought, yeah, it was pretty solid. They were open to it, and they went out and walked the property, and they weren't, swung pretty quick the other way.
Now, I mean, I will say, boards change, and can you guarantee that in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, once you have the development going in there and there's public pressure from the school to add more houses, would that change their mind in the future? I don't know. So,
I do just want to make sure everybody understands, just because it's identified in this project plan for those lots that, the full 163 units, this is just a plan. It doesn't commit the developer to building it. It doesn't commit anything. It's just the best case scenario or assumptions at this point. So for the school, if the school district decides not to sell those lots, you're fully within your right to do that, totally outside of this decision. You can still approve the project plan and then also reject selling the land. They don't have to mean, they both have to go the same direction. So I just wanted to make sure you're clear that this is just based on the best information we have as of today. Things can change over, as Adam said, over many years. But this is just the plan that they presented. If those 13 lots are removed, as Adam said, the developer is probably going to come back and said, the cost of that street is going to be the same if there's houses only on the south or if they're on both sides. So if we have to pay that full cost, we need some more money to help pay for it. The other aspect about it is too, that the incentives, as Adam mentioned, are purely cash incentives. The developer is going to be expected to put in the necessary infrastructure so that if by not being able to count on the revenue from 13 more houses, lot sales and what have you, that would reduce their ability to cash flow to pay for that extra road extension. And that would be why they would come back and ask for more money. But as far as whether or not that it's going to get more money from the TID district, that is entirely up to the city to negotiate as part of the development agreement. As we've talked about, clearly the city wants to come back and make sure everybody on the JRB is in the loop and understands everything. And I think Adam probably appreciates knowing that the school district would be supportive of if it justified going from 70 to 75 because of the drop in lots. I assume Adam appreciates knowing that, but it really doesn't make much bearing as far as your action as the JRB and to review this project plan. So I just wanted to make sure you understood that they're not tied together.
Yep, I got it.
In the room that you've already given yourself, the 120% gives you wiggle room too.
And just one thing too about the development as a whole, they are projected, the cost of the houses would be between 4 and 450, what they told us, which again, I understand the financial, hurdle in terms of it, I don't think anybody would think of that as being affordable. But the reality is that is the lowest of what is available for new housing. If you look at what's currently on the market, even just used housing in Elkhorn, I mean, the assessor told us the average house in Elkhorn right now is $300,000, and that's for obviously housing stock that could be 100 years old. So, and if you look at what new housing is going for, and heck, if you look at what's new housing is going for as you venture towards the Lake Geneva area, it's just insane. Right now, there's several condos in the city right now of Elkhorn that are up for sale right now for $350,000, and these are condos. So it's understandable why the cost to construct a new one would be between $400,000 and $450,000. So without this financial incentive, that housing cost is going to be even higher. So this is helping to reduce it somewhat, but we acknowledge it's not a perfect solution, in terms of what I think people ideally would like to be paying.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, we got this phasing plan. I think it's changed slightly, but I don't know if it's worth mentioning or maybe it's not, but that where the school district had it, it is a phase 6. So it's out there a bit, possibly considering how fast it gets developed. So.
Phase 6, and the city could amend the incentive when it enters into that phase 6 timeframe, whether the school wants to sell or not.
The one caveat is ideally we'd probably want to have that road built sooner rather than later.
You have to
So,
get access.
yeah,
But phase 4 probably.
You can always have a dirt road. We already sold the right of way, so you don't want to tear up the asphalt anyway with construction equipment, right?
we'll just
Enjoy
get,
your chili
Thank
summer.
you, yes.
and so lastly, or not, I would say lastly, but one thing I just wanted to touch upon too, and Joe, I'm gonna defer to
Did
you on
you
this.
get when he left?
If you want to summarize on page 43, Joe, the cash flow that's projected based upon everything we talked about.
Sure. Happy to talk through all that. There is I think a good executive summary of the whole plan, the first couple pages, starting on page 3 through page 5, to kind of explain the project cost, et cetera. If I could get you to maybe go back before I get into the cash flow, I just want to make sure everybody understands the development and the increments to support the revenues. Could you go back to page maybe page 36, Matt, please? I'll just summarize these very quickly. This is the project cost associated with the TID that's going to be supported by the TID. As you see, the biggest number here is the $16.3 million. That's the development incentive, That is based on 70% of the incremental revenue. That assumption is based on the assumption that the city is going to do this on a pay-go arrangement, whereby the developer will only get their incentive payments back based on what they actually generate. So that if they do not generate as much development as they say they're going to, or as quickly as they say, the development incentives coming back from the city will be less. This is different than what the city did on TID 4, because in TID 4, the city incurred debt to pay to put in the infrastructure, which put the city at more risk if the development didn't happen. But by doing this through a pay-go relationship, it does provide additional security to the city. So I just wanted to highlight that's the main and largest project cost included. If you can go to the
Is that for all phases?
Yes.
It says
Yes.
phase 1.
no,
Phase
that
1.
is just phase 1. This is purely, all these numbers are based purely on the Newman development.
When he says phase 1, he means,
The entire Newman
yes,
development.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, the entire Newman development, but it does not include the other 3 sites. Matt, if you go to page 38, please.
Wait, before you leave 36,
Mhm.
the estimated cost total on the ongoing, is that correct?
The 145?
145, and then is the line below that supposed to be the total?
Yeah, that should be 145. It's adding it twice. It's adding from the ongoing column and then the total for the 290. So that's wrong. The number is actually $145,000 less.
Good catch, Sharon.
Yes, thank you. Any other questions about the project costs? You could just go to page 38, please, Matt. I just want to show the development assumptions. As Adam mentioned, the developers indicated that they think the homes are going to sell on average for $450,000. The plan would be to start construction and preparing clearing the land, getting infrastructure in yet in 2025 and starting to build the houses in 2026. You'll see that this assumes the full 163 units, and based on that value, it's essentially $91.6 million of new construction. You can go to the next page, page 39, please, Matt. Here is the incremental revenue. What does $91 million generate in value? Based on the current tax rate for all of your jurisdictions, it would go in at $15.86 per $1,000 of equalized value. So $91 million of development generates $23.2 million of revenue as part of the TID. And if you could then please, Matt, go to page 43 on the cash flow. Here is based on that $23 million of revenue being generated. You see on the far left-hand side, you see total revenues again at the 23 million. The MRO at 70% of the incremental revenue being generated is projected at 16.27 million, and incentives going back to Newman as part of the project. There's $145,000 in admin cost for total project cost of 16.4 million. I do want to also note, if you could just scroll down just a little bit on this table, please, Matt. At the very bottom and on a couple other pages, I tried to include the language that the county wanted. I trust that this suffices the need to say that should the city add additional projects or if project costs exceed 120% of the projections contained in the project plan, the city will reconvene the JRB for approvals. I believe that meets the county's desires.
Yes.
So that is the proposed project plan, and as you see, if you can go back up again, I'm sorry, Matt. As you go over to the right, it shows the how the revenues are collected and built up, and when the cumulative fund balance is going to be enough that it could pay off the remaining expected obligations. And you'll see that the TID district is projected that it can close in 2043. This is a mixed-use district that would have a maximum life of 20 years. So it's going to come in at 17 out of its expected 20. So there, it's not the full term. As we've discussed, if there are fewer lots and the incentive needs to go up, this could push that closure out past 2043. The last thing I'd like, if you could go to the very last page, Matt, this is a breakdown to show what the overlying taxing jurisdictions would be projected to be contributing to the incremental district based on the future development. You'll see that based on your current tax rate, and if that held throughout the life and the development happens, Walworth County represents about 14.5% of the tax rate and would be contributing roughly $3.4 million. The city represents 41% of the district tax rate and would be contributing roughly 9.5. The school district, essentially the same size at about 41% of the tax bill, would be contributing 9.5. And the technical college is only 3.5%, and their share would be contributing about $822,000. I'd be happy to go through a further discussion about any other aspects of the plan. I know we talked a lot about the development that's coming, but if you have any other questions about the actual project plan or the process, I'd be happy to try to answer those.
Any questions from anyone?
So the city plans to adopt this project plan on March 3rd, is that,
Yes.
okay?
Next step in the process will be here in about an hour. The Plan Commission will be conducting a public hearing as well on the project plan before you, and also to consider the boundaries.
I don't think you're planning on delaying anything with this possible change coming in.
I'm just hesitant given, Newman is very, very eager to obviously get going. And one thing I wanted to say, one thing that's positive about this project is obviously Newman's well known. They've got experience. We're not dealing with a developer who isn't familiar with the area, and already they've been very good to work with in terms of very responsive and very proactive. And so, they've got really good expertise, and I don't think it would help us to hold them up for this other project, which we just found out about. And again, given the other project that developer's trying to do also in town at the same time, I don't know how quickly realistically they're gonna be ready to move forward on that project. So like I said, we would just probably have to.
Just floated it.
We probably met with maybe a half a dozen folks that have submitted plans for that.
Yeah, I mean, we've gotten a lot of plans for this particular parcel, so we really would like to wait. But again, we're optimistic. I mean, I think we're pretty optimistic, especially now, because this would be the first time there's actually been a TID that would apply to this parcel. So that may in and of itself be what gets the problem.
The only other thing I just wanted to share with the rest of the joint review board members, Adam's aware of this already, but the county did get a chance to already see some of the details on this because of the way it happened to come in the night before our meeting. So I did have a chance to preliminary share everything with them. They have another meeting coming up here on the 20th, and they've asked that Adam come to the meeting to answer some of their questions. There were some concerns specifically related to affordable housing, workforce housing kind of discussion. And so hopefully we can get those questions answered, because from my perspective, this has met everything that the county has me write a letter. You haven't gotten that letter yet. You will be getting it from me. I wanted to wait until after Finance Committee got the rest of their thoughts out, and then I would send the formal letter that I'm required. But at this point, my draft of it looks like you've met everything that we've requested. So it's really a matter now of what our finance committee says as far as if there's anything else that needs to be shared. So I'll probably be sending that out. It will come in time for your meeting for March 3rd, but it won't really be anything more than whatever they share at that point. So, and you'll already know about it.
Do you know what types of questions they have?
They are concerned about the price point of the homes. Which, I mean, we've discussed the idea that if you build a $300,000 or $350,000 home, you're looking at a much different kind of a home. And they need more information on what that looks like. I think most of them they're not in the housing, looking for a house right now, so they're not realizing quite what that housing market is. And so we're hoping that with Adam being present, and also we're going to be inviting Pam Carver, our housing person, to come and also talk about just what you can buy for the 350,000 more affordable type home and what the comparable is. And so hopefully I can get their questions answered. In my opinion, you're building these homes, potentially those who are in your $300,000 homes are hoping to upgrade, move to your new places, and then you have affordable housing open up in what's already there. So that was my argument, but I think they want to hear more information about it.
Any other questions about the project plan before we? No? So we have to decide when we're gonna meet next. You said the city's doing March.
Yeah, is there a general day of the week that works better for everybody? Are Thursdays, is that the preference, or do you have what day?
I personally don't. One of the advantages of working for yourself is you can say, this is what I'm doing, not ask anybody, except my wife every once in a while.
After March 3rd.
March 3rd, and it's got to be so many days after, I think.
The goal or the thought would be, we need to notice the JRB meeting again, to hold, to see if the council approves the plan as expected on March 3rd, publish the notice, and then look to schedule the final JRB someplace between March 18th and April 17th. You have a 45-day window after the council acts on it that you must act on it. So someplace between March 18th and April 17th.
I will be on vacation the last week in March, and I think that's spring break around here too, so.
Yeah, I'm out on that week too.
Joe, what did you say that window was? March 18th to when?
March 18th to April 17th. So if you wanted to schedule it the beginning part of April, that's within the window. That wouldn't be a problem.
So like the 3rd.
The first Thursday of April is April 3rd.
That seemed to work for everyone. Did we have a time we wanted to do it again? I forgot how many lefties we had on the JR. It's like at least 3 of them.
Creative mind.
Yeah.
It should be a very quick meeting. Typically, everything was approved, or if there's any changes that came out through the process to highlight, it's typically a 5-minute meeting.
Adam, do you know when, I'm sorry, do you know when they're wanting to start moving ground, moving dirt for the project? Okay. I just didn't know if that April timeframe would be.
Well, I mean, realistically, we're somewhat limited in the sense that council still has to approve it. They may want to make changes. We still have to negotiate a development agreement with them. So there's still a lot that's going to have to happen before they can.
Anytime, well, I know we've usually met in the morning before, but but I don't know, is this 4 o'clock work for everyone at the end of the day rather than messing up the middle or beginning of the day? Because this is fine with me if everybody's good at 4 o'clock. I would think he would probably like this better because,
Yeah.
well, let's say 4 for right now on the 3rd. And we'll ask for input from Jason in case he's got any conflicts, but plan on doing that for right now. Is there any other business then before we adjourn?
No, other than just, I appreciate everybody coming out. Fun the time to do this stuff. Thank you.
Well, it's a lot easier to do it now than it was this morning.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, if there isn't any other business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned.